I start.
It was joining remote.
Hi, everyone. I'm gonna, it's 6 o'clock. I think I'm echoing here. Maybe that will help. I'm just gonna hold on for a minute or two. I want to respect everyone's time, but I think there's a traffic. We're waiting for 1 or 2 people to join. So if I wait for 1 or 2 minutes, just to start. Waiting for members of the committee to come through. It's 6:02, so I want to respect everyone's time. So what I'll do is I will welcome everyone to the Budget, Education, and City Services Committee of CB5. It's BEX for short. My name is Renee Kinsella. I'm the chair. Judy Chu is the vice chair. Tonight we have 2 items on the agenda. Before we begin, I'm just going to give you a brief overview of how the committee works. Each presenter has an opportunity to speak to the committee, and their presentation and once the presentation is concluded, the committee has an opportunity to ask questions. And when all of the committee's questions have been answered, members of the public are permitted to ask questions. And once all of those questions have been addressed, the committee goes into what's known as business session. This is when only members of the BEX committee discuss the issue amongst themselves and determine what action to take. I'd like to stress that everyone's view is respected in this committee, and I would encourage every single member here to share their views. The BEX committee is somewhat different than other committees in CB5 in that we don't have applications come to us. So our determinations are not as straightforward. We can decide to draft a resolution or a letter, or we can use the presentation as a first step in gathering information to inform ourselves and our board and the community so that we can take action in the future. And we may do that, we may not. But when the committee does have an action item before it, the issue is voted upon by the present members of the BEX committee. And should the resolution pass, it's then presented to the full CB5 board for a vote. And that vote then becomes the final position of the board, which in this instance will take place on December 12th. So to get right to it, first up, we're going to welcome Jihad Hoyt. He's Assembly Member Alex Boris's legislative director. And he's going to discuss Bill A08049, which would remove the requirement for in-person attendance at public meetings. All of the committee has received a copy of this bill. And my understanding is that the new version of the state law is going to sunset on July 1st. And so this bill is going to address what would happen after the sunsetting of that bill. But I will give this over to Mr. Hoyt.
Thank you so much for the time, and thank you so much to the entire committee here. Like I said, my name is Jihad Hoyt, Legislative Director for the Assembly Member Alex Boris. So if we're talking about this particular bill, A8049, the way that it's introduced right now is that the whole goal of it is to go ahead and allow community boards to remain where they are right now, and to allow for community boards to also be able to have quorum requirements still as it is right now. We did make an amendment to this bill, but I'm not sure if that was forwarded over to the entire committee, and I can make sure of that. But the amendment right now is to go ahead and serve as a placeholder for when this bill does sunset next year, in which it will allow community boards to not be required to have a physical location for meetings, and that written procedures governing attendance and everything of that sort and quorum requirements of such public body at any meetings conducted through video conferencing will still be otherwise met if they remain video conferencing as well. So it's still allowing community boards to have this somewhat of a hybrid model to be able to be virtual or to be at least have a physical location as well. We are currently in the process of trying to seek a Senate sponsor. So that's why the amendments to the A08049 have not been introduced, but I can ensure that the committee can go ahead and see those amendments that they will like, if that's okay. Can I pass that along? Of
Sure,
course.
that would be great.
Of course. If I can get, I can go ahead and give my email as well. But that's really the gist of the bill, right? It's to allow the model that's going on right now to remain. Like it was said before, next year there is a sunset period of time in which the legislative body has the opportunity to go ahead and extend it, or to go ahead and say, no, we don't want to continue with this model. They will review it then. This is why we have that bill, just in case the legislature decides, hey, we're not going to go ahead and extend it. We want to go ahead and have this bill ready so we can go ahead and move forth and keep the model that we have currently going on.
Great, thank you.
Of course.
Questions from the committee? Any questions? Any questions? I have a question. This really isn't right for us just at this moment, right? We just wanted to hear where you were, what we could do. I know that it's just sort of percolating. You had mentioned it at our community board. I know that Assemblymember Morris came and mentioned it, and so we wanted to hear it. But is it right for us just at this point?
I want to go ahead, and I'm a very big person on, I want to make sure that there's transparency and make sure that whatever copy is the final copy. Right now, we are still workshopping it with our Senate trying to figure out a Senate sponsor. We have reached out to Senator Fernandez's office. She's from the Bronx, so where hopefully she can go ahead and carry it, but that's still up in the air. So once we get a Senate sponsor and we are submitting the amendments and we're both aligned, then I would like to go ahead and pass the final version to this committee for a vote, if that's okay.
That's fantastic. Any, Brad?
And just a point of clarification, and I guess that maybe it'll be clearer when you send the final bill, but you said tonight that it would allow us to sort of remain where we are, but right now we're fully in person. Is this is a return to sort of where we were at the beginning of the year, right? Where there was a virtual was an allowable version.
Correct. I misspoke. You are right. It will return to the version in which you'll be able to be video. Some members of this, community board will be able to be virtual as well as in person, and quorum will be able to still remain, and quorum will be able to at least be met because the people who are virtual will be at least be able to be counted towards quorum. But yes, you are correct.
Great. And then a second question is, this doesn't prohibit community boards from making the decision of whether or not their preference for in-person versus virtual, or does it?
It's still up to the community boards. If they want to be virtual in physical location, then they have the autonomy to do so. If they would like to be virtual as well as like that hybrid model that I was kind of talking about, of being virtual as well as in person, they're able to do that as well.
Great, thank you.
Of course.
Charles. Charles? Charles?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry about that slight technical issue. As a community board member with a disability, I just want, which is blindness, being able to participate virtually is a lot more easier with my talking computer than going to physical locations, which has its challenges. Sometimes not every location is handicapped accessible. I was just wondering, in this new bill, is it still going to be the fact that people with persons with disabilities who are on community boards can still participate virtually?
Yes, that's a great question. Virtually is still what you said, Charles, as well. Like you will be able to at least remain virtual and you will be considered present, at least meeting by the quorum requirements for the community board. So yes, you will still be marked as present. You'll still be able to be a virtual as well.
Any other questions? Mark?
Just to clarify, to the extent that there's a conflict between the policy or requirement of the community board and this amended law, the amended law would supersede the community board, right?
If it's voted on by the entire legislature and signed into law, then yes, the amended law
Okay.
would supersede. Mhm.
Okay.
Tristan?
Just a clarification question on the
course.
amendment. So it's removing like the requirement to be in person, and is it reverting to the old system where you have to provide an opportunity for the public to participate anywhere that members are participating? So like if I'm participating at home, then we have to post it and make that available to any members of the public to go into your home?
No, it wouldn't be allowing
People.
people to enter your home. No, it would be at least the virtual option. And if folks, to my understanding of the bill, would be like I guess posting a Zoom link for the public, things like that, to at least have the virtual opportunity as well. I can definitely give you more of a definite answer, but I can tell you for sure that it would not be allowing the public to be entering your home. But I can give you more of a, I guess, more of a concrete answer a little bit later, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Any attendees have any questions about the issue? Okay, seeing none. So I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna wait for that final iteration of that and then have
course.
you come back to us so that we can figure out that I think generally we're on board. We want to see it, we want to hear it, and then we'll sort of thrash that out. Mark?
I just have one question.
One
You may
last
have addressed this, but when do you think this would be like enacted and like actually take effect?
So
I would love it. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I would say I would love to have it done January 3rd, the start of session, but it would really, I think the legislature's really goal behind this is waiting until closer to that time that the sunset occurs. I believe that's in June, around that time. So that's when the conversation will really start picking up. But the Assembly member and I have been having conversation with our council as well as senior leadership to say, hey, we got this here. We want to move with it. This is nothing new. We spoke about this last year as well. We want to keep the pulse on this and keep it moving forward. So everyone's aware. We would like to get it done as soon as possible, but we'll keep you all updated. And also, I will send over a latest version of the amendment that we have currently that was workshopped with our council, so y'all can at least see a physical copy as well.
Fabulous. Thank you so
Of
very
course.
much. We really appreciate being
Thank
here
you.
and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Yes, feel free to shoot me any questions if you have any. All right, take care, y'all. Thank you for the time.
Thank you so very much. Really, really appreciate
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye now.
it. Bye-bye. Okay, next up, we have Brad Korn, and he is from Mount Sinai. We know Brad from Mount Sinai Beth Israel. We've met him before regarding this issue, the downsizing closure of Mount Sinai Beth Israel. Tonight, he's going to talk to us again about Mount Sinai Beth Israel. Brad, I see the floor to you.
Okay, there's two ways we can do this. I do have a slide deck that we used at our meeting last week if you want to share my screen, or we can just talk about it. I'm going to put the link to the closure plan as well as this slide deck in the chat right now so everybody can get it.
Okay.
Uh,
I think I did share these slides with the
Okay.
committee.
okay,
So it might be worthwhile for you to just sort of
Talk
walk
about
us and just talk it
Okay.
through. Yeah.
I mean, I can put it up, or we can,
If you want to
however
put
you.
it- yeah, that'd be great.
All right. Hold on, I'm trying to paste right now. Oh, there we go. Okay, so that's, I just sent in the chat. I just sent that. So I'm not going to put the slide deck up. So well, maybe I won't. I don't know. Hold on.
Or you can.
Or I can.
Actually, why don't you go ahead? Why don't you go ahead just in case people haven't seen it or haven't had a chance to have a look at it?
Okay,
Might be
somebody share my screen or can they,
Yeah,
if not, I can't do
let
this.
me see. Where's the,
You-
how do we?
You should be able to share your screen.
Let me see. I have a switcher, I'm not the most. Okay, hold on.
Hmm.
Is that working?
You
Yes,
started?
yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. Technology sometimes is a wonderful. So this is the screen deck from last Thursday's presentation. Some of it we don't really need to go through. You know who we are. These are our locations in and around the 5 boroughs and Long Island. An 8 hospital system, 150,000 inpatients, 47,000 employees, large teaching program. A lot of our funding comes from, public payer, Medicaid and Medicare. So let's get to the story of where we are now. We all know the 16th Street structure is an old facility. It is in need of massive work and repairs. And this goes from before Mount Sinai took over, and I have a 25-year history having worked there. There is infrastructure issues that are really affecting the hospital. But again, since we've ended the COVID era, we're back down to a very low capacity in the hospital. And we've seen, as you see on the instance there, we've seen a 73% decrease of inpatient census. And we've been facing recently what was $100 million loss every year. It really is trending up to $150 million this year. Manhattan happens to be one of the few boroughs that there is bed capacity. This is not, some of the other outer boroughs don't have the same, but Manhattan is somewhat actually overbedded for inpatients. So over the past 10 years, we merged with Mount Sinai in 2013. They looked for new ways to do it. We had discussed that 70-bed facility to be built over by New York Eye and Ear, and then of course COVID came. So, then we scrapped that plan and we started to look at other plans. In the interim, the plan to build the facility over by New York Eye and Ear was going to cost about $650 million. Right now, to try to replicate that program, it would be closer to $1 billion. And it's not financially viable, according to the leadership. This is just a snapshot of hospitals in general, as you can see in New York State. I don't know if you've seen the commercials on TV right now about trying to push people to increase Medicaid funding throughout the state, that we are vastly underpaid as a hospital, as a hospital network and system and statewide for Medicaid patients. So that doesn't help. So here we are with the closing of the 16th Street campus. And let me reiterate that this is the only part of Mount Sinai Beth Israel that is affected. I'm not trying to diminish it and I'm not trying to belittle it, but everything else that's affiliated with Mount Sinai Beth Israel, including the facility that sits in your district, 10 Union Square East, is not affected by this. So in the short term, as it says here, the ED and the hospital remain open until closure. They're going to reduce inpatient bed count to align with the decreasing patient census. To deal with, we're going to start meeting, I believe they started meeting at the end of last week with the other hospitals in the area, which include Presby Downtown, Bellevue, and NYU. ED absorption is an important issue to be looked at. And again, we're meeting with the other hospitals as far as that go. But 85% of our cases that come to our ED are treat and release. We also know that theoretically, and I say theoretically because it's easier said than done sometimes, a lot of those people could go to urgent care. We also have capacity if something like COVID happened again to absorb what our census was at Beth Israel throughout the rest of the system. So here is the ramp down plan as we know now. Originally, everything was supposed to stay open until July 12th of next year. But unfortunately, as will happen when you announce a closing, we've had some staff defections. So we've had some people leave and announce that they're leaving. So certain services from a safety standpoint may have to close sooner. And that's what's talked about here on this slide. Now, urgent and emergent care will still be available for all these services. So in other words, we can still treat a patient coming in with a stroke. We can still stabilize somebody with cardiac services. There's just things that would not be available. They'd have to be transferred after that. So here's the plan and what's not closing. Obviously, we just opened up a brand new behavioral health center down on Rivington Street, which absorbed the facility that was the Bernstein Pavilion over by Mount Sinai Beth Israel. That, actually added services, and there's a slide later that explains that. Obviously, one of the things important to you guys, Mount Sinai Union Square, New York Ioneer is not affected by this at all. No changes are anticipated there. You know about the Martha Stewart Center. We've obviously had people come there and speak about it. And then these other programs are just programs that are available in and around, other campuses close by. And the Blavnik, I can never pronounce this one. All these facilities remain open and operational. If you have any questions in between, feel free to jump in. I'm happy to talk. This is how our census in the ED is trending. That's just volume. This is all of our urgent and other emergency departments that are available in the community. Also, our urgent care at Union Square accepts Medicaid, which is important to know. I know we got a question about that. So what's some of our commitments? All the union employees are protected. They will be offered jobs in other locations at the same salary. So they're covered. That's with all of our union employees. There are some non-bargaining unit employees. It's a very small percentage, actually, and we are trying to find jobs for all of those people as well. This is just talking about more the services that are available downtown. These next couple of slides are actually not that important, I think, to our conversation tonight. This talks about what can be treated at Mount Sinai Union Square urgent care and what the operational hours are. And then, obviously, one of the biggest issues in the community right now is substance abuse and mental health services. And we've made a big commitment to that with the new behavioral health center. And here are some of the inpatient services we have. We have psychiatric beds, we have substance use and detox beds, we have rehabilitation beds. We have intensive care services, we have outpatient services, we even have, there are every program there, I don't know if you can see with the red dot, is a program that's actually been added there, including primary care, which people in that community were very interested and concerned about. We've submitted the closure plan. The closure date we've asked for is July 12th of next year. As I said, the hospital emergency department will stay open. There could be some slight modifications again if safety issues happen. And, we had our first public meeting on the 28th, but that was the first public meeting. We're not, we'll have more, and we're probably going to have a virtual aspect of it to make it easier for more people to attend. I am happy now to answer any questions you might have. I know that was sort of quick. I'm just trying to get out of sharing my screen, and I don't.
Okay. I am going to put questions first to our committee. And then I'm going to put questions to the attendees who are here. Questions. Well, I'm gonna exercise the opportunity to take a question myself. Greg, you said that the eye and ear is not affected at all.
Correct.
But I do know that there's a new ambulatory eye center that Mount Sinai opened in the Union Square area. Is that not going to pull your patients, at least some of the patients from the eye and ear center? From the New York Eye?
It's an additional, it's just bringing a more updated facility for the care. When I talk about New York Eye and Ear, I'm talking about, they were concerned about the building and the closure potentially of New York Eye and Ear before this happened, and that's not happening. We also, I will tell you, we did get approval for a surgical center, which is on 25th Street, but that's only for surgery, and that's sort of the state of the art now. And clearly, when somebody only goes in for surgery, that's all they're doing that day. So we're doing.
The Eye and Ear Center has like surgery rooms that are just for eye surgery. They're small operating rooms in the eye and ear. So isn't that going to pull if that new operating center is just for eye surgery? Is it going to pull that patient away from the New York hospital, the eye and ear hospital?
No, because it will only be for one schedule. It'll only be for a scheduled procedure. And it's just, that is sort of, the doctors prefer this, insurance confers this, the state prefers it. It's a better facility. And it's the questions we've gotten in the past about New York Eye and Ear is of people being able to do all their visits, let's say in one day, doing all the things at the same time. This is a separate type of issue. This is clearly just for surgery. So we don't believe it'll affect anybody. We don't believe it'll affect anybody's visit. And also understand that New York Eye and Ear gets people from all over Manhattan. So while theoretically somebody might be inconvenienced by not being at 14th Street, it'll also convenience a lot of people being on 25th Street.
Okay. Other questions? Mary?
Yeah, has the state approved your closure plan?
It has not. It has
Yeah,
not.
so why are you continuing this close down without their approval?
We are planning to close down. We did not plan on doing anything previous to that. Unfortunately, we haven't closed down anything yet. We have not closed anything yet, but we have moved up the timetable on a few things, assuming approval because of safety issues.
Why
We
would you
have to be-
assume approval?
Excuse me?
Why would you assume approval? From what I've heard from Assemblywoman Glick and others, it seems to be they're far from signing off on this.
Well, none of the things is until the beginning of next year anyway. I am not the person we are in constant contact with the State Department of Health. We have made them aware of what the plan is. I'm not in leadership, but that would be upon assuming that there is approval. We will deal with whatever comes of it, but these are plans in an interim that aren't happening till next year anyway, at this point.
Right? With all due respect, next year is 3 weeks.
I know we're in December. I get that. I do understand that, but we have to be prepared. We have to be prepared because people are thinking of leaving. We have to be prepared for making sure the patients are treated safely.
Kristen?
Hi, thanks for coming in and talking with us. I just have a couple questions about like the merger when it first took place and how it came about and how that might be impacting some of the decisions that are being made now. So when you guys were acquired or merged, was like a financing arrangement? Like, did you guys go to like external financing and take out a lot of debt, which might be increasing your costs right now and inhibiting your ability to make these investments, or was it not material?
No. In other words, it was a merger. I'm also not but I mean, I have a history, obviously, and it was a merger. And what happened was Beth Israel has been losing money over the past 10 years, and Mount Sinai Hospital or the system has been covering those losses. We have seen that go it has increased exponentially over the course of years, and where it's up almost 50% potentially this year. Also keep in mind that we face we all face the issues of inflation. And a hospital, much like every other, and I say business in quotations because I hate to call a hospital a business, but our costs have gone up significantly due to inflation. However, like a retail store or a restaurant, we can't pass those costs on to our quote unquote customers. Our rates are negotiated with the government through Medicaid or Medicare, and then through contracts with private insurance companies, which are already set. So we've had an increase in costs of labor, materials, and other issues that have affected us. I don't know if you saw the Cranes piece today, but there's a piece today that, even Mount Sinai Hospital, which generally runs at a positive, is facing a deficit this year because of the inflationary costs. Keep in mind also that a hospital, even if it makes a small profit, generally doesn't have enough money to reinvest in the infrastructure. And that's part of the problem. And I can speak to the history because I was there when we were Continuum. Even when Beth Israel was breaking even or making a little bit of money, they didn't have the money to upgrade the facility the way they should have. And that's part of the problems that Mount Sinai is facing today as the company that has inherited that.
No, that's very helpful. And then, I think you've come before us quite a bit over the years, which has always been great having that dialogue and back and forth. And it's great to see like your continued commitment to the area and the programs. But, I'm really curious about if there are any discussions underway about like after this closes, the hospital shuts down, whether you're continuing to evaluate shutting down some of those other services or operations in the area. Because, this was a surprise to us when it came about. And last time you came here, you were, not raising this as a possibility. So are we going to see this again in the future?
Well, nothing isn't. Well, I understand your question, and I understand your trepidation. And obviously, as the person who would come to meetings saying we're absolutely not closing, and now I'm talking to you about a closing, I get it. No, because most of what the other facilities deal with now are on an ambulatory basis. It's ambulatory and it's easier, and we've made that investment. There's no reason for it. The problem is that, and most of the facilities we're opening now, the infrastructure is good. Everything's reasonably new. It's a different story with inpatient costs, and ambulatory costs are different, and the structure and the facilities are completely different. So I do not foresee any changes in the services we're delivering. If anything, we're probably going to try to enhance the ambulatory services to keep the patient care at a high level. I don't want to diminish the fact that it is our inpatient practice per se that is closing. Our other commitments to patient care is there, and hopefully through better ambulatory and outpatient care, we can keep people out of the hospital.
Oh, great, thank you.
Brad?
Couple questions about the employees of Beth Israel. For the union employees that are being, I guess, relocated, how is that working? Can you talk a little bit more about that? Is there consideration for commutes or sort of routines or things like that?
I can't give you the complete specifics because not everybody who works for the hospital lives by the hospital. So again, I would assume in some ways, some people will be convenienced and some people will be inconvenienced. The one thing I can tell you is they generally do it through like job fairs and postings, and people get to look at what's available in the other institutions to see what's there. The guarantee for every union employee is they will get a comparable job at the same salary they're making now. So,
okay.
All
right.
And that was, by the way, that goes back to the deal we made when we were looking for the original transformation, just with the downsizing. It's just a carryover to that. That guarantee still carries forward.
And then for the non-union employees, which you said is a small contingent, but what is the expected retention or targeted retention for those employees?
I honestly wish I could tell you that. I'm not 100% certain. I can try to. It's still early in the phase with that, and at this point, nobody's been affected yet. But I will tell you, I have a few of my employees are on that list, and we are working to make sure that, and I'm working to make sure they're protected as well.
So there's no target right now for how many of those would be retained?
I think we're going to look to retain as many of them as possible. I mean, you know, there are, as you saw, we have 47,000 employees. There are jobs in the system. So hopefully, you know, I will assume, same as everything else, there's a certain number of people who are probably getting ready for retirement and will probably retire as if and when the hospital closes, and those things will happen. But I know we will make a concerted effort to find a place for every employee who wants to stay in the system.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Charles.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I
Yes.
can.
Perfect. So I was wondering these figures that you said about a census saying that there's been a decrease in patients using the hospital. Did you get these figures through an independent auditor or any independent agency? And if not, would you be willing to have an independent auditor to go through the records just to clarify what you're saying? And I'm also a little bit confused about why there's a decrease when we've had an increase of asylum seekers and immigrants into New York City. And, you know, a lot of the New York City resources have been overloaded. I'm surprised that somehow Beth Israel's not getting enough patients.
Well, two things. One is we report our numbers to the state. The state's well aware of what our numbers are with inpatients and that. So they're independent. So, I mean, our numbers are vetted. Our inpatient numbers are completely vetted in that regard. As far as the migrants coming in, there hasn't been a huge increase of migrants going to inpatient care. There are some scattered EDs throughout the system and throughout the city that have seen a bit of an increase from that, but it's not as much as you think, because there was a point where somebody questioned that and I followed through on that, and we've really not seen a huge increase in that inpatient load, and it clearly has not affected the inpatient side of the equation.
Additional questions. So I have a few things, Brad. They refer back to the report, the closure report. So on page 4, you say the hospital's payer mix is heavily governmental, with approximately 80% of inpatients covered by Medicare or Medicaid insurance, where the reimbursement is well below the hospital patient care costs. Commercial insurance reimbursements represent only 70% of the total payer mix and not sufficient to offset the Medicare and Medicaid losses. You were asked at the forum about the ability to be classified as a safety net hospital, and you replied that you don't qualify because of an insufficient quantity of Medicaid, Medicare inpatients.
We are just under the line. But let me also add, there's a couple of things about the safety net, and our elected officials are all on the right side of this issue when it came to safety net funding. But we did ask every elected official who represents the Mount Sinai health system to up the indigent care, the safety net pool. And they were all on the side of it. It didn't happen, however. And the safety net pool is a zero-sum game. So had we gotten it, let's say, and right now it wouldn't have probably been enough money to cover, it wouldn't have been anywhere close to covering our losses. But even if we had gotten it, it's a $700 million pool for every safety net hospital in New York State. Had we gotten that money, so let's say we did get it, that might have meant Brooklyn Hospital didn't get it. So Brooklyn Hospital then might be getting. It's a zero-sum game. That's the problem with the indigent care pool. So, that safety net money.
I know, but you point to the heavily governmental payer mix as contributing to your loss. If you can't do this, and these patients aren't gonna go away, what hospital system in our neighborhood is supposed to sustainably care for our patients in our neighborhoods? Where are they gonna go?
There are enough beds. Again, I'm not diminishing the importance of it. The overall number of inpatients, considering the amount of beds in Manhattan, is not that large. I mean, and you do have choices around. Some people, your district is strange. District 5 actually has certain parts that are not very far from Mount Sinai West. Also, the upper parts of your district, clearly it's not really, it's probably they're closer to Mount Sinai West than they are to 16th Street, and they can avail themselves of the services. Inpatient wise, it can be absorbed in the city. There are hospitals there for it. And as far as outpatient care goes and primary care, we will take care of these people. We will take care of people who are on Medicaid. We will take care of these folks. We're still there for them.
But on page 8, 48% of the PSA residents have public coverage health insurance, contrasting sharply with MSBI's payer mix, which is heavily governmental, with approximately 83% of inpatients covered by Medicaid. Like, in fact, your data listed on attachment 7, primary service area, is different than what's written up on page 4. The attachment lists 0.9% of patients with private insurance, 48% with public coverage, and 6.9% with no coverage. What's the distinction between PSA data with MSBI data? What's the distinction used between Beth Israel and the hospital? It's confusing. The suggestion would seem to be that PSA has more private insurance in the system overall, and that seems to argue for you staying open rather than not.
Let me say that private payers don't necessarily pay all that great either. Sometimes it depends. I am going to be completely honest and forthright. You have probably read that closure plan more closely than I have, Renee, and I'm not. What I'm saying is I will be happy to get you what the answer is, but I'm going to need that because I'm not the finance people who are better equipped to answer that question than I am. I would need to get back to you with that. So if you want to send me that question in a written form, I will clearly get you an answer to it. I can't answer that off the top of my head. I do know, I understand a document that's 143 pages can be confusing.
I have one last question.
I will say one thing also, and this was partially at the request of Assemblymember Epstein. We are going to put a more comprehensive, like 1-page, or maybe end up being 2-pagers, to give you a little more synopsis of what the closure plan is. So it's a little easier for the average person to understand it as well. That will be posted to our website as well shortly.
Rivington Street says, in case of severe psychiatric services, you refer to Beth Israel. What's going to happen there? Website.
It would probably then now, I don't think they've made final arrangements, but there's also Mount Sinai West, there's Bellevue available as well for those types of services.
But I thought that was supposed to be, I thought that Rivington Street was supposed to be the best there was.
No, I don't foresee anything that the only thing that I don't think Rivington could take care of is if there was a medical emergency. Anything else psychiatric, I think they'd be able to treat, almost anything that comes their way. The only thing that might be an issue with Beth Israel closing was if there was a medical versus a psychiatric issue.
Additional questions. I've hogged the questions. Additional panels. Charles.
Hi. So let's say sadly the hospital does close down and your plans all go through. Will the community, since they will be losing a hospital, which has served them for many, many, many years, will they have any say in who you're going to sell the land to, what the land's going to be used for, and if, shouldn't they have a say in how that land could be used to benefit the community instead of luxury apartments, for example?
You are probably voicing an opinion that is your brethren at Community Board 6 and Board 3 would probably echo. We have clearly not even gotten close to that step of what's going to happen. We clearly will have discussions and there will be meetings, if and when there is a disposal of property.
But could we get maybe a commitment that's you would at least, seek a buyer that will be using the land responsibly for the community?
I understand where you're coming from. My real estate people would not on this tonight have me. I can't commit to that at this point. I understand where you're coming from. And as I said, what you're saying now is probably being, Community Board 6, which sits where the property lays, probably feels as strongly, if not more strongly than you do about this. I can't, we haven't even looked at that. We will have meetings. We will have discussions with the community if and when the timing of this all happens. But I will tell you now that other than property on 17th Street, which we had informed everybody was previously put up for sale well before this even was being done, we have not, there's nothing marketed yet. We're not even close.
So I guess no buyers have shown any interest. No one's shown any interest in the property yet.
Not that I know of. And also I will say, right now, the way real estate is I don't know if this is the best. I mean, maybe I could be wrong. And this is my only thing. It's not the greatest time right now between, what mortgage rates are and what everything costs and everything else. I'm not sure what's going on with the market, but no, nobody has approached us yet because we have no idea. I mean, I'm sure there'll be people who are interested, but I'm sure there's going to be people who are interested who are going to be both builders and both, people who have other ideas to use the property for.
Sorry. Can I just add one very final question? Sorry.
Very quickly.
So with it being such an old building, how much hazardous material is in there, such as asbestos or
that stuff's all been cleared out many, many, many years ago.
Additional question, Mary.
Yeah, I live right off the tip of Union Square, and I've been to your Mount Sinai urgent care a few times with my son. First of all, are you suggesting with a straight face that that's a replacement for an emergency room? It's basically a doctor's office that has extra facilities in the back, and the hours are from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. during the week, and it closes at 5 p.m. on the weekends. And to suggest that that's like a replacement for an emergency room?
I respect your, and I'm not saying it's a replacement. I'm saying that there are places it's not a perfect solution. I'm not telling you it's not, but there are other emergency rooms also around besides ours that people will be able to go to. I'm not saying it is. The point I raised about the urgent care there is one of the things people were concerned about at the 28th meeting was not every urgent care facility takes Medicaid, but we do at a number of our locations, and Union Square is one of them.
Julie.
Brad, can you advise what services were moved away from the hospital that might have contributed to the declining census?
There really haven't been any real changes in the past number of years. We did many years ago move maternity out, but maternity is actually a money loser, by the way. You lose every time a woman gives birth in the hospital, it costs the hospital more than they get reimbursed for. And they did have a open heart surgery program which unfortunately was a good program. My father was operated on there, so I can speak well of it. But the numbers were declining to a point that you need to do. There's always a rub. To do a program well, you need to have a certain number of people for patient safety wise. And it was dangerously near that borderline when that decision was made. But really, nothing has gone out over time in the past number of years. I mean, we still have stroke, we still have cardiac cath, we still have all those other programs. The census has been low for many years, COVID notwithstanding, but one of the reasons we were looking to do the smaller footprint was because the census had been low. It's been a number of years, though.
Other questions from the committee?
Can I just ask real quickly,
Mary.
the Rivington Street, if, I don't understand the financing on that. My understanding is that psychiatric hospitalizations are the biggest, losing, if you're just talking about finance, losing prospect. So how are we to be reassured that that's not going to collapse?
Well, first of all, the state would, there's a huge need for it. The state wouldn't probably allow that to go. I don't know if you saw there was a hospital in Rochester that I believe got fined a significant amount of money for not reopening psych beds. The other thing is that the leadership of Mount Sinai is all psychiatrists. We've made a strong commitment. We just spent a lot of money on Rivington Street to build it. We're in that one for the long haul. And also understand the bedding and the staffing is right sized to the patient load we serve. And the facility is in significantly good shape. It's pretty much brand new. It's not facing the issues that the 16th Street campus is facing. One of the reasons we moved the facility from Bernstein over to Rivington is as bad as the 16th Street facility was in shape, Bernstein was worse.
Any more questions from the committee? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to questions from participants. I just have one last. So I just want to be clear. You're actually assuring us here. So there have been like suggestions that the services were moved out of Beth Israel and it created this death spiral. And we want to ensure that that's not happening at the Ioneer with this new ambulatory center for eye care. You're saying it's not taking the patients from the Ioneer. And you're assuring us that's not taking the same census. You absolutely
no, because also understand New York Ioneer is not an inpatient hospital, so it's a different ball of wax in that regard.
But the ambulatory centers are not inpatient either.
No, but we have no ambulatory centers in Beth Israel. Beth Israel is
I'm saying you're building ambulatory eye centers in Union
There's no
Square,
plan.
right?
New York Ioneer is going to continue. That I'm not saying that new enhanced programs may be put in other places because it's clear new, but New York Ioneer is not in any is not in any danger at this moment.
But I'm just saying that the fear is that as you build ambulatory care centers and move services like new and improved I
understand what you're saying. That is there is not a plan to move. There's not a plan to remove all. There will always be services at New York Ioneer.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up if there's no more questions from the committee to our attendees. And Janine Kiley, please, you have questions?
Yeah, I have two quick questions. One is the sale in response to your recent downgrades? Moody's downgraded you to Baa in August, and Fitch downgraded you just earlier this month. And second, the Fitch report mentions the declining census. Where are you losing those patients to? Are they going to other Mount Sinai facilities, or are they going to non-Mount Sinai facilities? I'm assuming you have a pretty good feel for the competition. Thank you.
Well, it's almost a threefold question. One is I think the first part is chicken or the egg, which came first, the declining finances or the downgrade. I think it's the fact that we have some financial issues that there was a downgrade. The second part is that
My question on the downgrade was, is that what's driving the sale of the closure?
No. The closure is predicated on the fact that Beth Israel is now in line to lose $150 million this year, and the health system can no longer afford to sustain that type of loss every year. And that the new facility, which we had hoped to build previously, which was $650 million, has gone up to over $1 billion. So it's those combinations of that has led to where we are. As far as patients, it's a combination. NYU has a brand new facility. I'm sure a lot of people have decided to go there. But I know that people have also probably gone to other facilities. There's an overall decrease in inpatient numbers every time you turn around, the amount of time you spend in a hospital for a service is decreased. When I was born, all those many, many moons ago, you spent 8 days in a hospital. Now you spend 2 days. My father-in-law had his hip replaced. He spent 2 weeks in the hospital. My wife left the same day she had her hip replaced. So some of it is just a trend of there being a need for fewer beds. But it's a combination of a bunch of things. Sometimes also doctors change hospitals too, and patients do follow their doctors.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Silmer, do you have a question? Silmer? Silmer, are you still there?
Yep, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just had one quick thing that I wanted to draw your attention to, Brad. On pages 2 to 3 of the closure plan, it lists affiliated facilities that are not going to be affected by the closure.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see New York Eye and Ear listed there. I know you've reassured us several times that eye and ear services are going to remain, but I just wanted to know, one, was that an oversight, or two, is there some sort of explanation for why that facility isn't listed on those?
I'll tell you why it wasn't listed in the closure plan, because New York Eye and Ear is a separate entity. It's not part of the Beth Israel. I will add, you may have heard that we are trying to merge the license of, I lost you guys someplace. Do you guys still see me?
I can still see you.
Okay, because I lost my screen for some reason. Give me a second. It's just a little disconcerting. We have applied to merge the license of New York Eye and Ear with Beth Israel, and that's partially to protect the finances of New York Eye and Ear, because their inpatient numbers run so low that they are in danger of losing their status as an inpatient hospital. But the reason that New York Eye and Ear was not, you didn't see Mount Sinai Hospital listed in the closure plan. You didn't see Mount Sinai West listed in the closure plan, I'm assuming also. New York Eye and Ear wasn't listed in the closure plan because they're not part of the Mount Sinai Beth Israel system. That's why they're not listed in the closure plan.
Okay. And then the broader question I had is, you've mentioned several times that other hospitals are right-sized for their patient census, and so they have a more sustainable model.
No, I said that about Rivington. I said Rivington is staffed and
I didn't touch it.
Rivington is a new facility. It's staffed and set to the size of the patient load.
Sure, It just a rhetorical point that it was right size, and so it's more sustainably run. My question though was just, what efforts have there been to see if right sizing Beth Israel is a possibility instead of kind of going full steam ahead with a blunt closure plan?
So the problem was that was the plan. When I joined, Beth Israel was very few hospitals operate at their licensed capacity. But through the 25 years I've been there, they've gone from a point where they were probably serving about 325 to 350 patients on an average daily census to where now it's somewhere between 100 and 120. So the numbers have dropped. That was the original plan, was to right size it and do it. Part of the problem is in the interim, the losses became unsustainable and the cost of the new construction became prohibitively high. And I think part of the problem was, and if you were at the event on the 28th, our CEO basically said her hope initially was it wouldn't come to this, that we would have been able to do that. But unfortunately, there's no way a new facility could be built in time to cover what we're still losing. That's why.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ritu, you have a question?
Hi there, sorry. Yes, I would love to have either today or at a follow-up time a better understanding of why the hospital has been running at such a low bed capacity. With respect to your services, the most important that need to continue are likely the emergency and the psych units. Now, there are no alternatives either at NYU or at Bellevue. They're running at capacity with respect to ED. Their psych beds are running at 92% roughly. And so there just there are no facilities to absorb your client base in these areas.
Okay, well, first of all,
and let me just.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I thought you were done.
I'm sorry, Brad.
No, it's fine. Sorry.
My question is, how can Mount Sinai Beth Israel run at such a low capacity, low bed occupancy when, again, your two next door neighbors, Bellevue and NYU, have at times over a 24-hour wait to get a bed? So right next door, there are waits, particularly out of ER. So either today or at some point in the future, it would be helpful to get a more comprehensive understanding of why there's such a low bed occupancy. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to address the second part first. As far as the psych commitment in beds, that's what Rivington is. Rivington is a complete and facility for inpatient, outpatient, for both psych and for substance issues. So we've covered the psych needs with that new facility. That covers everything that we had over at our Bernstein Pavilion. As for the other aspect of it, I can only, I can try to get you an explanation, but I can only tell you the numbers are what the numbers are. And our inpatient census is what our inpatient census is. Sometimes that happens to be, it is what it is. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, other than that's what it is. I mean, I think one of the things with NYU is NYU now, the new facility is all single bedded and new, but I bet you it's smaller than it was before. I'm sure it's fewer beds than it was when it was operating originally with that. But our census is what our census is.
You have another question, Richard?
No, I just think that response is unacceptable. We need an explanation of why the census is so low. We need a better understanding of that in the community, given the fact that there is a need, that there is a patient base, and what in the operations of Beth Israel is Mount Sinai unable or incapable of managing.
I can raise your question with leadership, but I will tell you that, and I'm not trying to be disingenuous here, our numbers are what our numbers are. I'm not sure.
So then my follow-up question would be, Brad, as management on purpose driving down census numbers as a means to close the hospital?
I would say no.
You would say no, but again, where, it would be helpful to have numbers and an explanation of the operations when the need is there. So that is what seems disingenuous to the community.
Okay. I will raise your concern. That's all I can do. I will tell you in the psych stuff though, the psych is completely covered.
Okay, Ritu, anything else?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay. Karen? Karen Flaherty?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to speak as a community member. I live on 17th Street, Union Square since 1978. Cabrini Hospital was my hospital for urgent care. Then Beth Israel became my hospital for emergency care, both for me and my husband. I am saddened about the closing, given that we have lost St. Vincent's, Cabrini, and now Beth Israel. Oddly enough, my question is about the physical assets that were mentioned earlier. You mentioned the 17th Street plan, of which I'm unaware what happened there with that plan. I guess I didn't see any community notices, or else I just don't walk over there that often. So I would like you to just, if you don't mind, spend a moment to explain what happened to that plan, or correct me if I'm wrong. But now
okay.
I really I'll be finished in a second.
No problem.
Now I really have a comment on what you said about it not being a good time for real estate. May I remind you that real estate vultures are in for the long term, while the whole neighborhood is asleep. 10 years ago, we have had total gentrification. Example, Houston Street, the Bowery, the Hudson Yards. So your comment about, it not being a good time, I think is not accurate. That's all I have to say.
I am not a real estate person. I will say the other projects you're talking about were in plan well before we've had what's happened with mortgages and other things, but I'm not going to debate that with you. 17th Street we have a group of buildings that were not being used for clinical use and were never going to be used in a rebuild of Beth Israel. We notified Community Board 6, where they sit. We notified all the affected elected officials that those buildings were going up to be marketed. I apologize. I didn't notify Board 5, but this was more, I notified the affected, community board and the elected officials who represent that area. There's no final disposition on those properties either at this point. But they were non-clinical. Most of them were brownstones, and they were not, as I said, they hadn't been used in clinical use for years. And a lot of them were never used even for clinical. A lot of them were offices and other types of facilities.
If I could continue, were they landmark brownstones?
They were not. But only 2 are connected also.
Okay, thank you. I'll take a look around the next time I'm over there. Thank you.
Okay. Layla.
Thank you, Renee, and thank you to the committee for the opportunity. I have a couple of questions, if you will allow me. The first one, Brad, I'm actually totally confused about the eye and ear situation. So on the one hand, you're saying that, you know, this medical facility is fine and that there is no plan to close it. But at the same time, you're building other facilities that are going to draw patients out of eye and ear into these new facilities. And then you drop this information that you are in the process of merging the license of eye and ear with Beth Israel because the patient count at eye and ear is so low that you're close to losing the license over there. And yet it looks like on a business and management standpoint, you are actually taking active steps that will cause the number of patients to actually get lower. So can you help us understand that? Because it looks like on a management standpoint, on the business part of how you run the business, you are actually taking active steps to actually scatter your patients, who then cause these drops that you use to justify the closure of your establishments. So help us understand how despite all your reassurances to Renee that nothing is in the pipeline for eye and ears, how is that not going to impact the situation with this particular facility?
Okay, so let me try to explain. New York Eye and Ear, while it has inpatient beds, has almost no inpatient services. They are licensed as an inpatient hospital, and according to CMS, you are to maintain your reimbursement rate as an inpatient hospital. You are supposed to have a minimum daily census of 2 patients, because almost every single procedure that is done at New York Eye and Ear, and that's been over the past few years, is ambulatory. We have a very low census. Most days it is below that too. And if CMS came in, they theoretically could take away their status as an inpatient hospital. Wouldn't lose a license to operate the facility. We would lose our status as an inpatient hospital. So that lowers your reimbursement level, not just for inpatient services, but also for outpatient services, I learned. So to stabilize it and to affix it to a hospital that will have enough patients to keep it at above 2, we started a license merger with MSBI. Now, I know that sounds weird now because we're announcing we're closing MSBI, but don't forget that MSBI also has a Brooklyn facility that has a 200 patient bed hospital. So that was really done not to change any aspect of the operation of New York Eye and Ear, not to hurt New York Eye and Ear. It was done to protect its status as an inpatient hospital to keep its financial stream strong. The surgical center that I'm talking about was built because it is now a preferred method that you do them at these centers. That is state of the art, that you're doing it. And as I said, that's not affecting any patient load. That's not affecting anything. That's still going to help the bottom line of New York Eye and Ear. It's not, no patients who get eye surgery tend to stay overnight. It's not an inpatient facility either. It wouldn't have helped New York Eye and Ear if it was built there. It is a preferred method to have those types of facilities built.
Okay, thank you. I have a follow-up, a couple of follow-ups if I'm permitted.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Can you actually speak to the reimbursement rates? Is it correct that the reimbursement rate for Beth Israel is lower than these new outpatient facilities that you're constructing?
No, because every line and every service is different. Beth Israel, Mount Sinai Beth Israel has there's no outpatient services in there. So what you get reimbursed for an outpatient service or an outpatient visit is different than what you get for an inpatient visit. And an inpatient visit, it's different for depending on what type of service. An appendix surgery gets less than stroke. So you're talking, unfortunately, you're talking apples and oranges there.
So in essence, what you're saying is that what you are proposing is apples and oranges.
No, I'm saying that we're talking about two different things. I'm saying that the reimbursement for inpatient services is different than the what you get for outpatient services. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, but at the same time, you're telling us that the inpatient service that is currently provided by Beth Israel is going to be replaced by outpatient services, and that the community should be satisfied by that.
I'm not telling you that you should be satisfied with it, and I clearly understand everybody's angst and feelings with this. I'm
sorry, I'm going to interrupt you, Brad, but if we are not to be satisfied, then what is your proposal so that this community is satisfied? You understand that, we're not joking here.
I'm neither
a game. Okay, this is our community. This is our health.
What I would tell you is, first of all, so you understand, I have worked there 25 years, and my mother was a patient at Beth Israel in 1981. So I have strong feelings for the hospital. I clearly do understand where you're coming from. I'm not. What I'm trying to say is there's two different ways services are provided for people in healthcare. There is outpatient care, and if it's done effectively, hopefully we do keep people out of the hospital. What we believe strongly, and I'm not telling you that you should be happy about it, and I'm not happy to be here telling this story, but what we're saying is that our inpatient numbers, we believe, are so low that they can relatively easily be absorbed within our system and the other hospitals in the area. But that we also are committed that all of our outpatient services that we've built up and that we've provided are still going to be there. And again, it's a hope that effective outpatient treatment should hopefully keep some people out of a hospital.
One additional question, if I'm still permitted.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to follow up on Ritu's question, did Beth Israel management take any steps consciously or unconsciously, purposefully, or without any specific intent that caused the census to drop?
I will tell you no, because I will tell you that it was a trend that started before Mount Sinai came. It was a trend that was starting beforehand.
So if we were to request access to some of the correspondence with some of the doctors, we would not see that you, for example, did not support them in their practice, that the fact of closing maternity didn't have any impact on pediatrics, which is not always a money loser, or on orthopedics for all these kids who tear knees and break arms when they're playing sports. Maternity creates an ecosystem, and this ecosystem is actually what supports a hospital. And it's unfortunate if you don't know that. I'm not in healthcare, I do know that. And I think that the management trends that have been applied to Beth Israel really lead to a lot of questions.
And I will tell you that there will be differing opinions on that, and I'm sure that you can find that there are doctors who feel a strong affinity to the hospital that would probably echo your sentiment, and then there would be other people who understand and I hate to use this term, the business of healthcare, that also understand what has happened. And a lot of things that have not been taken into account is the condition and the age of the facility, and plays a huge factor in a lot of this.
But at the same time, your response to Ritu's question is, well, our numbers are our numbers. They are what they are. You don't.
No. She was asking
any explanation.
No. But I'm telling you that, our numbers. You're asking me to explain what our numbers are, but our numbers are what the numbers are. I can't.
My question is very specific. It was not, the numbers are the numbers. Okay, we can agree on that. And they were not driven by any managerial steps taken by Beth Israel.
I would say no.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's see. Summer, you have another, or Karen, you have another question. Karen?
I'm sorry, I didn't unraise my hand.
Oh, okay. Any
Done.
other additional questions? Mary?
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on what Layla was saying, and I just want to read a sentence from your website about Mount Sinai, Brooklyn. Mount Sinai, Brooklyn is a 212 bed acute care community hospital located in Midwood, which has gone through numerous renovations and upgrades over the past decade to expand the scope of services. So can you contrast that to what has been playing out at Beth Israel in Manhattan? And was that not a conscious decision to put resources into Brooklyn as opposed to Manhattan?
I'm a government and community affairs person who is familiar with the facility in Brooklyn was to keep it as a viable option. There were no other Mount Sinai hospitals in Brooklyn. There were no other places. And to keep people coming to Brooklyn, to the Brooklyn hospital, theoretically, and to prevent them from transferring in, having to be transferred in Manhattan, they enhanced services there. It also was always of their census was always, I would venture to say almost at like 90-something%. So their numbers, if you look at our discharge numbers are much higher in a percentage, in numbers, not even just percentage, from Brooklyn than they are from Manhattan.
Sure, absolutely.
Could you just walk me through the number of psych beds in 2013 when the merger took place, and the number of psych beds that were converted over the COVID period, and the number of psych beds that are at Rivington?
I would need to follow up. I don't have the exact numbers at my fingertips right now. So if, like, I know Renee had a question. If you guys send me a couple of those questions, I can get you those details. I don't have that off the top of my head. I apologize.
Any other questions from any of the?
Renee?
Charles, you have another question.
Yes, just circling back to a question and a comment. I just want to quickly say, I wanted to know why in the New York Iron Infirmary did they reduce the urgent care for eye emergencies from being 24 hours to only certain hours during the week, reduced hours, and why they never did reopen the outpatient pharmacy that not only, had medicines at cheaper prices than the regular pharmacies, but also had a program for, sometimes doing huge discounts if a patient can afford their medication. And I just want to make a comment, as a patient from New York Eye Infirmary, I remember roughly around 2014, my eye specialists in glaucoma and cornea, even in retina, they all left, they all vanished. And of course, as a patient, they didn't go into detail what was going on, but they left. And, patients will follow those doctors. I followed my glaucoma specialist to another facility. So, I am concerned that, the more it gets, these changes are happening and the doctors leave, of course, logically the patient numbers will drop more, and people care about their health and they trust the specialist they had, and they will do anything to get the best healthcare, and they'll follow that specialist.
I don't have an exact answer. I will say a couple of things. One is, healthcare is a somewhat competitive business. There are hospitals all the time trying to recruit doctors away who they think are good, people help them bring patients. I mean, every system does it. So that may have been what happened with your doctors. The other thing is I'm assuming the pharmacy probably had something to do with 340B issue, that we lost the subsidy that no longer allowed us to subsidize the pharmaceutical costs at a lower cost. I can follow up on that for you, Charles. And as for, I'm sure that the emergency room was a utilization issue, but I can follow up on that for you. I do know, if you need, there's still emergency care at New York Pioneer though.
Okay, Leila.
Thank you, Renee. I just have a comment, and it is more directed to this committee and the full board. We are about to embark on a rezoning of Midtown South to create a lot of housing. We absolutely need housing. We desperately need housing. And with housing comes all sorts of needs, including schools, but also hospitals. And I find it really, really difficult to embark in, this massive rezoning, claiming that, we are going to bring housing to our district while at the same time not being able to provide the healthcare that these new residents need. So this is something, for our community board to really grapple with. But I think that, when we are reviewing this rezoning and other land use actions that will support the creation of housing in our district, we really have to look at the issue of hospitals and healthcare, and where are these people going to be cared for, and we want to make sure that our district is diverse, including in terms of ages, and we want to make sure that we have young people and that they can be adequately treated, and also that we have seniors who also receive the proper care. So something for us to think about. But definitely the closing of Beth Israel is a big blow. Thank you.
Thank you, Leila. Any more questions from either the committee? Any questions from our committee or our attendees? Any questions from our attendees? I mean, there's a lot of, I'm just going to make, I guess, a comment. We talked about services. I mean, OB was moved out very quickly after the acquisition. Would that be true, Brad? OB?
I don't remember the date, but it was. I mean, but we're talking. I mean,
and then pediatrics.
But we're talking about a lot of this stuff was 10 years ago. I mean,
and then joint replacement, and then neurosurgery, then ENT, then gastroenterology, then I mean, just service after service after service. Anyway, okay. Any more questions or comments? Okay, seeing
Renee,
none,
let me just add, Renee, I know
Yeah.
there's some follow-up, so if you can get me some of whatever the follow-ups were, then I will get the question.
Yeah.
I'll try to get you the
And-
answers.
And Brett, I want to say, I really appreciate you being here. I know that you have to be very, very busy, and I know we're beating you up here today, and
It's okay.
I
Listen,
appreciate you
by the
being
way,
here. really do.
I don't take this personally. I really do understand. It's not something, I know this is a difficult time, and it's a conversation I wish I wasn't having, but I whatever questions you need answered, I will do everything to endeavor to get you whatever response as quickly as possible.
I do appreciate it, Brad. You've been very, very receptive to us. You're always, very receptive to us, and we do appreciate you being here. We appreciate you responding and getting back to us with our questions. Thank you for that. We're going to go into business session. I think comments from the committee about action to take, particularly given Leila's comments. How do we want to react to this?
All right, so I'm going to leave then, so you guys can talk about me behind my back, right?
I'll let you know what you say,
Thank you.
Brad. How's that?
All right, take care, guys.
Thank you again for being here and all the questions. Really
No
appreciate
problem.
it.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Tristan.
So just a question on like the decision points, or like, so they are applying to close down the hospital, and so
Yeah.
if we were to take an action, we would be telling whoever passes
So-
a view on that to
So
deny it.
our electeds are working on this issue. Because it's a closure rather than a merger, before, my understanding of this is that a certificate of need was needed before, and they came to us for that.
Mhm.
For closure, that's not necessary, but now I'm understanding there's now this merger process, so that is a little bit of news to me. But we need to make our views known about
Mhm.
how we feel about this, about all of it. And so I think we need to make our views known. How do we feel? Brad?
Could you talk about process of, from us, because it's a little bit less straightforward, resolution versus letter?
Right. So a letter is something that we can do and we write to our electeds, but resolution is stronger. It's on the record. It's on our website. People can search it. It's a matter of record for people, it sits there, it's there. A letter is something that can come out of the committee. It's written, we can take it through the exec. We can write it, it's not as strong, if you will.
Then,
Tristan.
sorry, with that, I would be in support of a resolution.
Mhm.
Against.
Tristan?
I agree.
Okay. Charles, I see you.
I think in the resolution, just jumping ahead, let's say the worst comes to worst and it does close down. I think it's really important. The community is losing, a hospital that was benefiting the community, and I really think the land has to be used for the community and not for luxury apartments or luxury retail, something like that. I think it really needs to be sold to someone who's going to be a good steward and really bring something to the community that will benefit the neighborhood and people who live in the area.
So what I will say to you is that Mount Sinai Beth Israel is a nonprofit organization. So we can't really dictate to them. There's various ways to skin a cat, but it's not clear that we can dictate to them what they do with their site, right? So we can make recommendations and we can talk about, what we would like to see and our opposition to whatever it is that we're doing. But in terms of mandating, yes, we would not like to see any luxury apartments being made on that site. We would love to see, obviously, I think one of the things that we've seen is that they talk again and again and again. I think Ritu mentioned it. They talk about their census, but we haven't seen that data. If you really read their report, which is really interesting, they talk about this very long report, but a lot of it is just references to other things, and you delve into it and it doesn't kind of jive altogether. I mean, Tristan, we got to put you on that because you're even better at those figures than I am when you dig down into data. It doesn't really jive, and so it would be great if we even asked for a closer eye being cast on the data. I mean, when you look at all these services that are closed, it was like a domino effect. Where did these doctors go? What happened to them? What happened to their services? I mean, do we really believe that if you build a brand spanking new eye surgery ambulatory care center across the street on 25th Street, that people are still going to go to the Eye and Ear Hospital on 14th Street? He's saying, well, they don't stay overnight in either one of them. Well, golly gee, which one are you going to put? Are you going to pull the patients from there? And is it going to cause a death spiral? And is that exactly what happened at Mount Sinai Beth Israel? I'm not suggesting that happened, but one must wonder. Yes?
No, I mean, obviously their business decisions were made that were not the same ones that were made out in Brooklyn to reinvest in the infrastructure, etc. I just know everybody puts their little emotional hooks into this, having given birth at St. Vincent's, we've lost like virtually all of our inpatient beds in our community. And without Beth Israel, it's a huge loss. We're creating a desert of health care.
I mean, they've created a wonderful center at Rivington Street, but the bed number is reduced.
Right.
The bed number is reduced.
They've
And
been
we
asked
can't,
this many times.
we cannot, we can't stand for a reduction in beds. We need an increase in beds. I mean, my opinion, I mean, I'm not speaking
I
for
was gonna say we need less psychiatric, long-term
who
psychiatric.
is going to say
No
that,
one-
but
no
I
one's
mean,
arguing against that.
yes, but I mean, I want to hear everybody else's views, but what do we think?
Just a
Brad?
question to kind of Charles's point, which is, can that not be a condition of the should DOH decide that they would allow for this closure, could input from a community board not be a condition of that? approval?
Well, this is a state issue, so Department of Health this is a state issue, number one. Electeds are very much, there was a forum and the electeds were very much on point. Assemblymember Epstein is very much involved in this. All of our local electeds, Carolina Rivera is involved. Councilmember, all Councilmember Botcher, a lot of our electeds, all of them, in fact, are very much involved, very much appalled at what's happening here. You know, I think everybody recognizes that we're creating loads of housing and like the services are not keeping up, right?
Agreed. I'm just saying, as part of our resolution, should we not request that should a closure be approved by DOH, even though that is, you know, done obviously with the consultation of our elected officials, that the input of those elected officials and ideally the community boards be part of that next step afterwards.
Yes.
Well, I think, well, you're talking about if it's housing, you know.
No, I'm saying if they, if they close it, then where does that land go? An input from the community board ideally, but also maybe an elected official could be sort of a condition of that approval.
Well, didn't Layla touch on that? I mean, these are major rezoning that they're getting ready to do, and that there's going to be community input from the community board on that whole issue.
Yes, for sort of the entire
region
area, but I'm talking about specifically for this site. Because it might not necessarily be housing, it could be something, it could be a different facility, it could be retail, it could be whatever.
Right. I mean, we can certainly include that.
I think the DOH thing is a really important thing that you brought up, that they don't even have that.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I mean, people have been saying that again and again, where is DOH in the room? But again, it's sort of this death spiral because employees leave and.
To catch up.
Right.
But it sounds like, I mean, there's going to be a reduction in beds. I mean, we don't want it to happen, but it's going to happen. So it's just a matter of trying to put lipstick on the pig, right?
Well, I mean, you, if you say that, then it's done deal.
Well, I mean, if we're using his numbers, I mean, they can't keep
If you use
operating.
these numbers.
You can't keep operating at that level that he's
I mean,
about.
people say that Sunday night in that hospital, the emergency room was insane. Insane. People were waiting and they were shifting people out of the emergency room to other hospitals to try to
So
get
are we
beds.
asking for like an independent audit? Is that what we're trying to
I
ask?
don't know, maybe.
I think that we need someone to take another look specifically at that. My son was doing his EMS training over the summer and spent time at the ER. It's insane a lot. And that's why I just tried to make the idea that this doctor's office on Union Square is gonna pick up the slack for people walking in with, you know, car accident wounds and so on is preposterous. So maybe that's something that we demand. I think that was something that was part of the discussion. I wasn't happy how it shook out with St. Vincent's, but at least across the street, they do have something approaching a 24/7 emergency room. And that was part of the giveaway of that land. So that's something we might want to look into.
It's really interesting, and I don't know the details, but I think ironically enough, Lenox Hill is looking to expand it. How can that be?
I'm sorry, what?
I think I've heard that Lenox Hill is seeking to expand uptown. So how can that be? Like the dichotomy of that is just bizarre. Yes. Sorry, Charles.
Yeah, I was at the public meeting in Berwick College, and you know, there's a lot of upset staff, you know, union heads from 1199 and 1099, and then the main two issues that I noticed were, first of all, they didn't get enough warning about that there was even a public meeting. So a lot of them, you heard word of mouth or just happened to find out that there was going to be a public meeting. And also some of them did say that, you know, patients were moved to other hospitals, and you know, and they were very upset that about services declining. And I feel like maybe, I don't know if this could happen, I just feel like maybe if we could collect testimonies from people or have a hearing for those people, at least to be on the record, at our community board to, you know, actually say, you know, what really is going on, because after all, they have the inside knowledge, you know, since they work there, and it'd be good to let them have a voice, because I felt like not many of them did have a voice at that meeting, and I think if we had our own separate opportunity for them to, you know, come and speak to us and share what's going on, I think that would be really great. But I also think there should be an independent audit of the census. I think that they've been using. I don't think there's any harm in that, and it'd be interesting to know if it reflects other, you know, maybe information that can be requested through freedom of information, maybe 911, you know, records of ambulances going to Beth Israel, or, you know, ambulette companies that bring patients there and stuff like that. And I totally agree that, you know, the emergency room is busy, especially, you know, emergency rooms are always busy on a Friday and Saturday night because it's full of, you know, most time, unfortunately, full of people drunk from the bars. So I don't understand how, you know, they're not having enough, you know, patience and use. But I do think we should give an opportunity for people to at least on the records, you know, say what's going on and give them a chance to, you know, testify.
So what I'm hearing here is that we'd like to do a resolution. We're understanding that our community needs more, not less beds, that the hospital will be a huge loss to us. We're asking that DOH, the Department of Health, for any use that comes after, engage the community boards as well as the electeds in any usage, if they would. Is that what I heard you say, Brad?
Yeah, I just would want to make sure when we write the resolution, we don't write it as though it's a done deal.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay.
But should this happen, then this.
Okay. We are requesting that the Department of Health do an audit or look very closely at any documentation that was presented by Mount Sinai Beth Israel justifying the closure of the hospital.
Yeah, to add on to that, I'd like to have that independent audit ideally come up with a kind of conclusion as to why their census numbers are declined.
Okay. Mark?
I'm just curious, like, if we do the audit and regardless of the outcome, like, can they be forced to continue operating at a loss if necessary? That's what I'm like, what would the audit really accomplish? Just we have more knowledge about what's happening.
I'm not sure. I think that they can close if they wish to close. I think ultimately at the end of the day, I mean, they can close, they want to close. I think that people are exploring. I think there are groups that are exploring, you know, nonprofit status and what that means. If in fact they are doing this, you know, if in fact the closure was something that was not
somehow in violation of their like legal obligation. Yeah, because I'm curious, like, we can voice our outrage, but it's if they're like a private and like,
well, I mean, if you were a
want?
nonprofit to provide healthcare,
Yeah,
and in fact you are not providing healthcare because in fact you have acquired, you know, so my understanding, and I don't know this to be true, my understanding from talking to people is that it was a functioning hospital, right? And then services were moved and moved and moved and moved. Now it's a not functioning hospital, right? So if the idea was to sell that for whatever reason, then you're not providing healthcare, you're doing other
it's
stuff.
like masquerading as a real estate company.
Yeah.
Got it.
So
Okay.
that, you know, that's a different animal than like, I'm losing money, I can't do it, right? So those are two different things. So I guess we want to get at that. That's what we're trying to get at, right?
I'm of the position that any transparency and information is good, and that's kind of half of our role.
Right. So that's what we're getting at in our
Even if it doesn't make,
resolution.
if it doesn't make a material difference, having that information I think is valuable in and of itself. Sure.
And obviously, we'll state specifically the need for psychiatric beds and how
Of
this
course.
was directly counter to that
Right.
dire need.
What else? What else are we thinking?
The point about the non-union employees, should it close? Kind of like that language about kind of trying to ensure the ideally, all of them are kept, but.
Other ideas, other thoughts?
Just as I said, these time limited walk-in services are no replacement for 24-hour access.
I'm also concerned about you know, you walk into an ER, they have to take you.
Yes.
You don't have to have insurance, you don't have to have anything. You walk into you know, those, what are they called, urgent care? Do they have to take you?
Well, I'll just to set the stage. I don't know if any of you have walked into that pavilion on 14th Street and 4th Avenue Broadway. But you know, it's this grand, glamorous thing, and then you have to stop at the security guard and ask you where you're going, and then you have to stop at the front desk, and then you take. And the waiting room is half the size of this room, and there's a few, you know, examinations. The point being that. No, I don't think that they have to take you. I mean, they're basically stopping everyone who's walking in there. It's sparsely used. So no, I don't think they have to take charity care. And before you can see a doctor, you have to present, you know, proof of insurance. That's been my experience at that urgent care.
Okay.
And even if it's not the official policy, there's kind of like social cues that would push people away from using that as
is that the one that he said takes Medicare and Medicaid?
Yes.
Okay.
But you can imagine, like with the homeless population, how the percentage of people who actually are enrolled in those programs.
And we really like to, I mean, I'd like to know if you agree with this. When I read that whole screed about, you know, about the income and all of that, where I really genuinely want to know, where are people in our community going to go? Are they going to go to Bellevue? Because have you ever been to Bellevue recently? It's overwhelmed. We have, you know, our fair share in our community. We are the highest number of fair share in our community for shelters, for migrants. I mean, it's great. Our community is but Bellevue is really, and so NYU also 6 hours. Julie, how long, you know, I don't mean to put you on the spot, it's a long wait, right? Long wait. So, you know, Beth Israel sort of eased that, you know, was halfway between that. When that's gone, I guess those are the options, and that's going to put the pressure on both of those to an extent that where are people going to go?
I wasn't at the meeting, but I gathered that Arthur Schwartz told his story about having a heart attack. He's right in our neighborhood in Main Square. And basically they were going to bring him up to Morningside Heights. He probably would have died if he hadn't insisted that they take him to NYU. So it matters.
It definitely
proximity matters.
Yeah. Charles?
Yeah, I was going to quickly say 2 points. As someone who does use Medicaid, I can tell you City MD Urgent Care, which is all around our area, would not take me, and some of the other urgent cares definitely do not take my plan and would say, sorry, can't help you, have to pay out of pocket. And I was going to also say about at that meeting, I just want to echo again the public meeting, which is, you know, we have problems with congestion, with traffic in the city, and just think about the importance of an ambulance getting a patient to an emergency room, especially if they're having a stroke or a heart attack, is really important. And it does leave this desert, this, you know, when time is at the essence, you know, especially, you know, someone's having a heart attack or stroke.
Thank you. So we'll add congestion. We'll also add, to Layla's point, the additional housing that's coming with new zoning regulations and conversions. So, you know, we're adding all of this stuff about thinking about the additional services that are required. You guys agree?
Yes.
Isabel, do you have anything?
I don't have anything to add.
What?
I don't really have anything to add.
Okay, thanks. Anything else?
That's comprehensive to me.
Yeah.
Okay, are we ready? Anybody would like to make a motion? I think we're ready.
Motion to approve resolution subject to those terms, or including those terms.
Okay, do we have a second?
Seconded.
All right, are we going to take it to a vote? And Mohit is on our, Mohit, you're still there. Mohit, you haven't said anything, but I see you on there for purposes.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Mo, do you have anything to add? You've been very quiet, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I love your input. Is anything to add?
No, I would just say it's extremely saddening, just to echo community feedback, that this potential closure might occur in the next 6 to 8 months. I think the sentiment that there has to be a comprehensive understanding built around why this is happening is critical, so that this can also be prevented for future instances of privately held / not-for-profit entities following a similar path. And I think the point around understanding why the numbers for the census were so low is particularly relevant for that point. And so if we can, either through the hospital system or through a Department of Health, build an understanding of why that happened, we might be able to have more community input on preventing this in the future.
Thank you, Moet. Okay,
Renee,
we're ready to go, and I say yes.
I'm a yes. Mohit,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Tristan,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Isabel, yeah. Charles,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
that's it.
And that concludes the issue of Mount Sinai Beth Israel, and I'm just checking if there's any new business before we conclude. Any new business? Seeing none, I'm gonna thank everybody this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank
Very
you.
much appreciated, and I'll see you at the full board. Thank you.
Thank
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks for opening the windows. My name's thank you.